In this video, I'm going to take you through my favourite big flathead glide baits and talk to you about why I use different ones and in different situations and what tactics you can use to get onto some real big fish. I'll just start with the one that I've been fishing with this morning. This is one of Zerik's new affinities. It's a jointed swim bait. It's got two joins, you can see it there. 220mm long, so it's a fairly big bait compared to what you might have thrown in the past for flathead, but these things really do work. And I was fishing with this one this morning, this white one early on, and you might see there it's got two little pinholes. That's for these little weights. It comes with an interchangeable weight system. These little wet lead weights that have been designed to sit right under the chin there and fit nice and snug, and you can remove them so that it's a floating swim bait, or you can attach the little lead down underneath like I've got there now, and you can see that that's going to drag it down and pull it down under the surface. So these are really versatile with what you can do with them, and all morning I've just been refining and playing around with my technique and retrieve with these things, and they're going to catch some big fish. I saw a post from Nick White, a gun flathead fisherman, with a giant taken on one of these things. I think he was using the white one, but they come in a variety of colours, and these probably are my two favourites. This is a real pearly colour and you can see it a mile away, but if you're going after cod and barra, some blokes going nuts at their dog on the other bank. If you're going after cod and barra, then these things are going to work as well. They come with really heavy componentry, and the way that I've been working it is really twitchy, and on the surface just getting it to move. Hopefully I can show you a little bit of footage of it swimming, but it's got a fairly tight action compared to a lot of swim baits, which is why I still like it for the flathead. Most of the stuff that I use is a single join for my big flathead, and I think it just has a real effect on the kind of action you can get out of it to make it look like a whiting or a mullet on the flats. Big loose swim baits tend to really fold around on themselves. I'm not as much of a fan of those as I am either a tight swim bait like that or a single join glide bait. And I've got a couple other examples here to show you. The finish on some of these is just exceptional. If you've seen Giant Flathead in the Shallows, my latest full-length film, then you'll know what this is. This is a Lucky Craft Real IU, and these things are just dynamite. You can tell they look just like a whiting, and this colour especially, they're really hard to find now. I don't think EJ Todd and Lucky Craft are bringing them in or producing them anymore either, but this has got to be one of my all-time favourites. I think it's like a 178, and the balance on this, it's just beautiful. It's got a slow rise, so it comes up to the surface, and often I'll get taken off the surface with big flathead. I might even show you some, how about we just take a look at some footage out of my DVD, Giant Flathead in the Shallows, so you can see for yourself the kind of fishing you can get onto with this big glide bait, and then we'll come back and go through some of the others. Let me show you how I like to use this glide bait. I've just thrown that on, and I'm fishing in about 2 feet of water again, so I'm just up on the shallows. And you can use a bait caster if they're heavy enough, or spinning gear for sure if you really want distance with your casts. But these glide baits can be really effective in the same regard as those big plastics, and the retrieve is very similar. So what you're trying to do is just get it to glide and fade into a position and look like an injured bait fish. In this case, it's like a great big mullet, and really big flathead go after these big mullet up in the shallows. So this is a floating glide bait by Lucky Craft, and you can go up to anywhere up to the 20-25 centimetre mark. This one's only 18. And all I'm doing is just big casts and lots of stalls across these flats. You don't really want to be throwing these things over the weed because you're going to get fouled up, and it really affects the way that they come in. As soon as they catch any weed, they just start to drift off to the side, and then it falls down and it really wrecks the retrieve. So you're trying to focus on the patches and bring it between all of that weed, or fish over just a sandy, muddy bank. And as the tide drops, you might go to a darker colour as well. So I've got this one because it resembles a whiting or a mullet, and on the top half of the tide, these sort of greys and whites and silvers and that sort of colour I think are really effective. But once it gets really muddy, I'd go to something with a knocking sound in it. A lot of glide baits are just silent, but if you can get some with knocking sounds like those gantrels, then you can get a bit more vibe and a little bit more presence in the water when it becomes discoloured. Either that, or you might go to a diving lure that's really pulsing and throwing out that vibe into the sand and puffing up bits of dust as well. So with these, I'll fish a little bit heavier just because they're a lot more expensive, and I haven't really found too much of a problem with. I'm using. Oh, I'm on! Get stuffed! I'm on, haven't even started using it! Just sat there on the surface, and it's a beast! Oh! It's a beast! This is just insane! Oh, it's a good fish, man. That's a 20-metre run. It's a 20-metre run! This isn't fitting in the net, eh? That's how you use it. He's had 2 big runs in him, eh? Come up, big girl. Yeah, it's a beast. It's a beast. That's my alarm going. Yes, I gotta get in. Oh. So I was just saying 20-pound line because these big swim baits, man, this thing is charging, eh? They're just a lot more expensive. You don't want to drop a $50, $60, $70 lure to a flatty. Oh, I just felt one of the hooks pull out. Don't come off, big girl. I'll be spewing if you pull out. So I'm just dropping the drag back a little bit now. Not the pressure on the fish. The pressure's there the whole time, but the drag pressure's down a little bit. Oh, this is a beast. Look at those runs, man. This is nuts. Oh, it doesn't want to come up at all, eh? It's important not to pull up on the fish too when you're right above it. Like I'm starting to drift over it. I don't want to pull up on the fish because their big face pulling that up is more likely just to pop the hooks. He's just sitting there, eh? Oh. Yes, look at that. Man, this is a corker. This is croc territory. Oh, he's running me under near my keel. Gotta be careful, eh? Huge shadow, look at the size of this thing. Get up, I just want to get it up and show you, just so if it pops. Look at the size of that, man. That is a giant. This thing, look at this beast. Look at that. Look at you, big girl, stunning. The meat through the shoulders on that thing. Yeah, alright, I'll see if I can net it. Probably a bad idea if I net the hook. I could lose the fish. Oh! Yeah, bad idea. Bad idea, because I don't have a big enough net. Man, the way these things can pull and the pressure they can put on a setup, like, this is nuts, eh? Come over here, big girl. Oh, I've just got to try and get her into the... I've just got to try and get her in. Could do that. I don't want to be too... Yeah, that'll do. I'll just be careful and just cushion all of that pull. You wait till you see this. Try and protect her as she comes up. Oh, the hooks are pulled. Come on, big girl. There you go. A crocodile. Look at it. A big 80 taking on one of these glide baits. You have to throw them in the shallows. I'm in a foot of water and this giant came after it. Look at the mouth on her. Oh, the big tail. Man, these things pull. Oh, so much fun. So much fun. Big flathead fishing, God, it's addictive. Big plastics, big glide baits in the shallows this time of year. Get after it. If you haven't done it yet, go and get after it. Look at that. So once you get your first big flathead on a glide bait, I swear to God, it's going to convert you. It's very addictive fishing, as you can see, super exciting, and the fight those flathead put up is just insane. It's really blown my fishing world apart fishing with these things, and getting my hands on some, you know, less obvious, rarely seen glide baits, I think is a big part of the game. So Blair Chilton from Chilton Tackle Co, he's done some brilliant glide baits over the years, and I got my hands on one of his just in the last 6 months, and this thing's fantastic. It moves a lot more water on the surface. It's a floating glide bait again, and look how tight that action is, which I really like, but the bullish head on it means it moves a lot of water. I'm a big fan of a big profile with this front area of the face, so you can see all that water that it moves, and then a really prominent eye. I just love that, and he's got that with his big glide baits. So that's one of Blair Chilton's. Another one that I got my hands on, this is a DIY Roman made that a mate of mine, Alex Begg, made up, and we ended up fishing them, and we've had some action. I haven't pulled a big one on it yet, but this thing just works beautifully. So you can make them yourself if you really sort of study it and know what you're doing, or get it going and take your time. And the finish that he got on it, it's the first one he's ever made, and look at the finish that he's achieved on it. It's so impressive, and I still fish this as one of my choice baits now. So this thing's about 170, a smaller option. And this is one that I bought out from the States. My brother lives in Seattle, so I got him to bring a couple of these back. This is an S-Waver by River to Sea, and it's a 168, I think. Yeah, 168, and it's super, super slow moving and subtle in the water. It's got heavy gauge hooks on it, and I'm not a real big fan of the way that they come standard in the packet. There's the packet there. That's what you're looking for in the shops, but if I was to go and put different hooks on this, what you want, because of the take of the flathead, the way that they're fairly cumbersome and often they miss, I go for things like these Raptor Z's by BKK, and these STXs by Owner are really good. There's so many good hooks out on the market, but they're the ones that I go for. You can use assist hooks as well. I think assist hooks are really effective, and these Scorpix by VMC, that Crossy from Crossfire Lures, he gets these tied up with these feather teaser tails. You might have seen that I run it on this real IU. I think they're a great idea, the way that they've got that hook sitting underneath, and I use them on my surface lures as well, but assist hooks or really big catchy hooks are the way to go. You don't want big gauge stuff that can't really penetrate, because often they don't get the right kind of hook up. They don't get it in their mouth, it's on the outside of their mouth. So you want super catchy hooks. The way that I fish these things, because of the weight in them, generally I'm running like an overhead swim baiting rod with my Corrado, and this is like a 795 SB by Dobbins. It's a Dobbins Fury series, and this thing just gives me a heap of length so that I can hoik these things way out over the flats and cast big distances and get to those big wary flathead that would otherwise be spooked. They're really, really wary, these big flatheads, so having a setup that you can cast out really long distances to get away from your boat or your kayak is a really good way to go. And I generally will run like, the best way to go is a little bit heavier braid, in my opinion, because if you get bird's nest and you're using a sinking swim bait, for example, and you lose a $60 lure, then it just gets too costly. So I tend to run a bit heavier gear on especially days like today where there's a surface disturbance and there's wind. That's the way to go. But these glide baits, if you haven't fished with them yet, do yourself a favour this flathead season. Get something like this, like a big Affinity series, or one of those big glide baits. Rapala have just released one, and a Rushy glide, something like that with a single join. They're the way to go to get your really big flathead game going. And you're just fishing in the shallows. You're fishing up to about 3 or 4 feet of water, and maybe I can show you some footage now of the kind of retrieve that you're after. What you're wanting to do are little half turns of the reel, really, to get the glide bait just bouncing side to side. And you can every now and then maybe do a sweeping retrieve, so you're just drawing your rod about 1 meter and letting that glide bait move and then fade into that position. And it's the long stalls with these big glide baits that get the flathead off the bottom and get them grabbing it. So make sure you're using a patient, long retrieve with a really long pause. That's the way to go. So anyway, I hope that helps you get going. If you haven't done it yet, you've got to get yourself a glide bait. And if you haven't seen my Giant Flathead in the Shallows DVD or full length, it's an online downloadable video now as well. That's got probably the most insane glide bait fishing and other stuff, but the glide bait fishing in there is probably the maddest stuff that's ever been caught on film, I reckon. There's some giants in there, there's 90s, 80s and 70s in there, and it goes through in a lot of detail how to do it, so you can actually watch it and see it, and there's a heap of action as well. So make sure you check that out if you haven't already. But I hope this has helped you get in the right direction so you can go and get your big flathead this season. I'll see you in the next video.